potentially take some sites from this sites of value overlay and elevate them to sites of significance overlay, which has stricter controls and a far fewer number of sites. So there is an ongoing piece of work. So we could anticipate the overlay changing through a plan change, but robust documentation in behind all of the remaining sites and confirmation from Mana Whenua that they're of value, yes.
Second question, Madam Chair, through you. We've heard today, and as we hear every day, that this council is, a big driver of more housing, future urban zones, unleashing them, intensification, the compact city, the livable city, the economic development strategy, GDP, productivity, exports. We must drive those. Have we, in the consideration of this, or has any element of council, maybe it's the Chief Economist's unit, and or ATEED, have they looked at the potential cost of these 2,213 sites as far as on the building sector, the cost to the utility sector, as well as the overall cost of devaluation to those that are in and around these sites of value as far as commercial and residential property values? Have we got a number as to what economic impact will this have, and what impact it could have on our number one drive in this council to improve our housing stock?
Madam Chair, the majority of the sites are on public open space and in rural areas. There are far fewer in urban or future urban areas than in the rural situation. But yes, there was an economist and economic analysis as part of Council's case at the hearings in June. So that work was done. It's available on the Independent Hearings Panel website. Under this hearing topic, you'll find the Council's economic evidence and support for a overall economic cost-benefit analysis in terms of the sites.
Well, so you can, with your comment there, John, as far as the majority of them on publicly owned sites, can you guarantee that these areas that are left, the 2,213, don't include subdivisions, don't include landfills, don't include residential housing areas, don't include car parks, and don't include industrial centres? They're not part of this, you're telling me?
Councillor, sticking to the business in hand, we're talking about the sites that are planned for withdrawal. We're not talking about the sites for retention. So I think we're probably just a little bit out of scope with where this is heading.
You can't have one without the other, Madam Chair. I'm wanting to hear about the ones that are left, because we've been given assurances for 2 years that we're refining this, and last time we got down to 3,600, we were told, rest assured this is it. And then we were told that the maps of value were poorly mapped and simply wrong, and I'm just wanting assurances that what we've been left with is what we're being told. And all I ask is that if indeed it only largely affects public only open space, then I want assurances that that's the fact. And I want assurances that landfill, subdivision, residential housing property and car parks and industrial centres are not affected. So that's the question that I and many Aucklanders want to know.
And that's as maybe, Councillor, my job as chair though is to make sure that we are well prepared and able to give you the information you require. The information that's available to us today is the information on the sites that are considered for withdrawal. So we can talk in detail about the sites considered for withdrawal. I don't want to put our staff on the spot by detailed questions for the sites. I'm just, hang on, Councillor.
It's a simple question.
Yeah, it is. And for those of us who attend all of the meetings of the unitary plan, this is part of that ongoing discussion with the unitary plan, discussions around site retention. But today we just need to focus our minds to 2 things. Number 1, do we want to progress this issue? Number 2, if people are comfortable with the withdrawal of the sites that have been deemed no longer appropriate, then that's the action that we need to have. The recommendation we've got on the table is that we do neither, but we simply wait and progress the work. So,
well, I'm just seeking some assurances, so can I ask that to the officer? It's not a...
And I'm going to ask John to comment. I just don't want us to be forced to give answers that we don't have the prepared information on.
Just to briefly clarify, majority of sites are on either public open space or in rural areas. They're not, the majority aren't on public open space, so yes, there are a number of sites on private land in urban areas and in rural areas, and we've canvassed that with the committee before when we had the decision to retain those sites.
Okay, I think that's important.
Councillor Casey.
Well, thanks, John, and apologies, I should have brought this to you earlier, but my concern rests with the colour-coded charts that aren't colour-coded, so I don't actually know what you've got in mind. So there's 3 sites in particular that concern me. One is Oruarangi Road and Otuatawa Stonefields, where there are 13 listed and 3 changes, and Oakley Creek Waterview, where there are 7 listed and 4 changes, and Long Bay, where there are 8 listed and 1 change, but I'm not sure what the changes are, whether they're... I'm quite happy with the amendment, actually, so that we can go through these with a bit more time. I'm sure everybody will have similar queries, so it's about a chance just to
David's amendment, no.
do it a bit more thoroughly.
Sorry, Madam Chair, is that a
I think
post this meeting, or you'd like some clarity around those specific sites right
Well,
now?
I think that there'll be 21, oh, somebody's missing, but there may be 21 queries like that. And I'm apologising for not bringing it earlier, but I would quite like to find out more about those specific sites.
I think, Councillor Casey, your question's really valid. This is not colour-coded. It's not quite 50 shades of grey, but it certainly is just on the grey scale. There's not, you can't actually tell exactly which one. So maybe if this is critical to your decision-making, we can get some clarification. Otherwise, it might be good offline to go through the yeses and nos with staff. Is it critical for
Unless
now?
somebody's got a colour-coded version that I can flick through for the next half hour.
Just looking at Tam and Catherine over there, unfortunately mine is black and white as well. It was supplied in colour, and the electronic version would have been in colour, but...
There seems to be a lot of grey in this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Few of us want to see the colour
Madam Chair, we
coded.
do have the
Chair.
colour version here.
Yeah,
Okay.
online.
Can we
So
maybe
if we could
just show
share that
Councillor
with
Casey?
Councillor Casey.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Councillor Casey, once you've had a chance to have a look. Councillor Quacks.
Yeah, thank you. Madam Chair, just a couple of questions first of all, and I will be putting up an amendment. But first of all, a couple of questions for you, John. Have the remaining sites, have they been through any kind of review process with the Archaeological Society or with the Heritage Advisory Panel?
The Archaeological Association were certainly involved in mediation before the hearings and in the hearings. They initially had reservations about these sites being in the unitary plan. They came around to the point of supporting the sites and value to mana whenua overlay. So yes, there were some early concerns from the Archaeological Association about this approach. At the hearings, my recollection is that they were supportive of the approach. So there was quite a shift there during the mediation, working with mana whenua, IMSB, other submitters involved in mediation, and the Archaeological Association came to the view that this was a pretty robust approach.
Okay. And can you just confirm that, I think I heard Member Taipari say that these sites were removed to facilitate development. Can you just confirm whether they're being withdrawn to facilitate development?
That's not the purpose of the recommendation, no.
Not my words, Madam Chair.
Maybe used to do it.
It's from somewhere.
Oh, no, they weren't your word, but they're pretty close to it.
I remember that.
Pretty close.
I don't think any of us quite picked that up.
No,
and
thank you,
Frank's
Madam
never
Chair.
typed it in.
Councillor Quacks,
Okay.
got good ears there.
Councillor Walker?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. The first one is just around the process. I understand, and there's some explanation around the desktop archaeology data audit. Having said that, there's also the value screening assessment. Can you describe that?
Madam Chair, I can describe that. So in preparing the council's case for the hearings, council engaged with mana whenua to gain a better understanding of the value that mana whenua ascribed to these 3,600 sites. All 19 were approached over a period of roughly 12 or 13 weeks. Responses were received from initially 17, but in terms of a final confirmation, 13 of the 19 whenua groups in Auckland did respond, and they, for the 2,000 or so remaining sites, gave them a value from a cultural point of view. There were 4 or 5 different criteria that that mana whenua agreed were a sensible way to respond, and so for each of those sites there is an ascribed or given value from mana whenua in terms of their cultural significance.
Okay, so just further to that,
And that was part of
And-
council's case at the hearings to support the retention of the balance of the sites.
so just further to that, and you may not be able to answer this, but have there been site visits by mana whenua?
I can't answer that question.
Okay, well, I would suggest that it's pretty important to know that, and we need to know that. So I just put that to you, Madam Chair. The other question I've got is around location. So am I to assume from what I read here that we now have an accurate location for those sites that it is proposed to keep? And by accurate location, I mean something that's GIS definable, GPS definable.
And this was all discussed in March, but yes, there is a GPS coordinate, at least one GPS coordinate for each of the remaining sites, and the documentation in behind that GPS coordinate has been carefully assessed to ensure that it has integrity and accuracy. And so the advice from our archaeologists, having gone through all of these sites very carefully over many months, admittedly on a desktop exercise, not visiting all the sites, is that the GPS coordinate is accurate and aligns with the documentation that supports that GPS coordinate.
So just further to that, is the GPS coordinate accurate to within, what, a metre or the like? How accurate is it?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that.
Okay. And the reason that I'm asking this is that this particular site triggers an issue around resource consents that radiate out 50 metres. Now that could affect up to, say, 17 properties, depending on where it is. I know of one site that I'm familiar with because I visited it, and it affects a number of properties. It doesn't have to affect a number of properties if we've got accuracy to that degree. It need only affect, and even that's questionable, one property. And as I say, even that's questionable. So this notion of having accuracy is really important. So have you taken that into account in respect of the other properties that are affected?
Madam Chair, this is an issue that was discussed at committee in March. A decision was made in terms of council's case at the hearings. Evidence was presented at the hearings. The panel will now decide, will make recommendations back to us on issues such as the precision of the mapping of the remaining sites, and indeed all sites.
Thank you, John.
And the last question I've got really just goes to consistency. We know that we have to meet a very high bar in terms of the consistency around our treatment of trees. Trees have to be scheduled, they have to be identified, they have to meet a particular criteria. It's really difficult, and we've been knocked back. The same thing applies to the scheduling of historic buildings. Are we applying the same bar, the same tests in terms of credibility and worthiness to and substantiation to these sites?
Madam Chair, we're applying the tests under Section 32 of the RMA, as we do to all provisions in the unitary plan. Sites of value to mana whenua are different to scheduled historic buildings, which are different to trees, and the approach would differ in light of the values that the council is seeking to protect from essentially demolition, destruction, those sorts of things. We're applying the same RMA Section 32 test.
Okay, we might need to move this along a little bit. We've got councillor Penrose, councillor
Well,
Crump,
I just
then
had one
member-
last question.
Then member Taipiri and councillor Lee.
So,
I
just one
need-
last question?
Just hang on, I'll come back to you, councillor. We just need to, if this is continuing questions, I think we'll go as far as we can, then we might just need to put the recommendation. So, last question, councillor
So,
Weber?
the last question just goes to the information that's in attachment A, which gives us an identification of where this particular site is. Is there further information that supports this around the nature of what it is, what its value is, what its context is?
For each site, there is a archaeological site record, and that information is available to the public, and our facilitators in our resource consents department regularly providing that information to potential applicants for resource consent, or just people with a general interest in what information sits behind these sites. So yes, the information is available mostly on the council website, but if not on the website, our staff in the consents department can point people in the right direction to find that information.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so as I say, I've got councillor Penrose, councillor Crump, member Ngamani, councillor Lee, and then member Taipiri will close the debate. So.
Mine were
Council-
questions, Madam Chair.
Query, that's just on the amendment.
No, this is not an amendment, this is the substantive. This is
Okay.
the, no, this is the recommendation. No one put anything else up?
Madam Chair,
councillor?
point of order.
Yep.
Point of order. Councillor Quacks, I heard very clearly indicate that he foreshadowed an amendment. So I would like to feel that you will be able to accommodate that, because you didn't object at the time that he foreshadowed that.
I'm absolutely fine with that.
That's fine, thank you.
Just making sure people are, we need to canvass this as much as possible, because then we're quite happy to go to councillor Quacks's amendment, but I just want to give everyone a chance to ask their questions of member Taipiri's recommendation.
Thank you.
That's why I'm being quite clear in who is speaking. So councillor Penrose, you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I'll be quick. Look, two of my questions have been asked by councillor Brewer to member Taipiri's substantive. So I will wait until councillor Quacks's amendment goes up, and then I'll speak to that.
Okey-doke. Councillor Crump.
I have a question. I guess it is related to the amendment tabled and up on the screen. It is
Oh, this is the recommendation. This is the substantive motion.
Okay.
And councillor Quacks's amendment that appears
it's
shortly.
still, my comments still stand regardless of what we're looking at. So it's actually a question for IMSB, but if that's not appropriate, Madam Chair, then I would direct a question at John, just in terms of confirmation. So if I can proceed, and then we'll just see how we go. Just curious as to why IMSB and Mana Whenua, for that matter, did not provide any written closing statement at the hearings in regards to removal of the 1,300 and or so sites. So given the comments that you made earlier, strongly opposing this removal, why did the IMSB not, as per paragraph 28, not provide any closing statement?
Good question.
Sorry, we've just been distracted here for a moment. Councillor Crump, did you wish a response? Was it appropriate? Just checking.
Well, technically it's for the IMSB,
It's for
but if
IMSB.
that's...
And
But who can answer?
I
Okay.
can't answer the question, unfortunately,
Nope.
Councillor
can-
Crump.
Member Taipiri.
Well, Madam Chair, it is the officer's report, and I'm being asked questions as the Independent Māori Statutory Board about that report.
Sorry,
Okay.
and the reason why I was just
I just wanna get some
distracted for a moment,
process.
we were just checking the right process, because I had actually thought councillor Quacks was going to move his amendment when he had his speaking turn, and that's what threw us a little bit.
I mean, I can say
Councillor
this,
Quacks
Madam
didn't.
Chair, that the board, I understand, supported the 3,600 sites.